I've been always wondering how much time does it take for a player to establish a first impression of the game. In fact, a lot of different surveys have been made on this topic. There is a statement that the first 15 seconds are crucial to get the player's attention, the first 5 minutes to engage into gameplay, the first 45 minutes to introduce core mechanics and plot, and certainly the first 2 hours to make a decision whether to use the opportunity to refund. And today we will look at the new action RPG The Ascent to find what we should do as a devs to make an excellent first impression. We will discuss the specific elements of the game design that can affect this. Also, traditionally we will consider various elements of the project, searching for the features implemented at a high level, and those which require additional polishing. So if you're ready, we will plug into this atmospheric cyberpunk world. Let's start with the setting, because as many believe, cyberpunk is now on a hype train. Well, maybe it is, but from the player point of view, it is overused by myriad of identical projects. Obviously, such a palette and a dim neon lighting perfectly convey an utopian mood. But come on, have you run out of ideas? Here the world itself, in details, is really impressive. Everything in its place. Corporations, implants, the struggle for survival in chaos of the streets, all this forms the rich lore of this place. This element implemented well, but what about the narration itself? Basically, we see canonical quests and plot twists which hardly can impress. Yes, everything is okay, but direction of dialogue scenes is hopelessly outdated. Quest objectives are mostly generic. Kill, find, figure out what's going on, but on the other side, there are solid cutscenes. Clearly noticeable that devs have invested a lot here. And action RPGs has rarely impressed us with the narrative. There are exceptions, of course, but the main hook is primarily lays in a fast and exciting gameplay. So the Ascent got no issues with speed and pacing, but its gameplay lacks excitingness. Core gameplay is based on aiming skill, positioning and quick dashes like in top-down shooters. But first of all, the isometric perspective is not the best to implement this kind of combat, especially at sharp angles in the horizontal plane. Secondly, in this case you should provide variety of enemy roster and challenging level design with unique combat puzzles. So, as you can imagine, this project got problems with both elements. Let's start with the enemies. Typically there are 4 types of those: trash mobs, common ones, champions and the bosses. Each type can divide on shooters and brawlers according to their behavior model and stats. And this is not enough, especially in first few hours when you meet common enemies 95% of the time. Every step you take, you stumble in a huge waves of trash mobs. It's just impossibly boring. And it's become even worse with the trivial enemy behavior system. I am too demanding though. In most modern RPGs, enemies act like stupid dummies. But here the AI system itself allows them to attack simultaneously, from any direction. In this regard, you will die constantly if you are not overgeared or leveled into survival build. Glass cannon gameplay doesn't work well here. And if you're trying to go through the area with the enemies few levels higher than you, there is no chances, even if you're a player's god. The grind gets over the skill again. But there are also outstanding design element, the visual style. You will not find such a level of 3D model execution and attention to detail in most of AAA projects. The work of modelers is simply amazing. I can't even roughly estimate the amount of man-hours that were spent on the design of such a variety of characters, environment, objects, weapons and other details. It seems as if a whole army of designers worked on this project. In fact, the Neon Giant studio is just a handful of people. Bravo! This is a really titanic work. And while core gameplay are very simple and repetitive, there are several fascinating encounters that stand out in design of combat arenas and boss mechanics. But overall, in most cases, it all comes down to one thing: kiting mobs around, and that is pretty much it. I don't want to spoiler things, but the final boss encounter is especially disappointing. It is easily comparable to the final scene of the original Mass Effect trilogy. A much more epic ending was expected, and here you got the same. Well, now let's move on to the main topic of this video: how to make the proper first impression. Let's take it in order. From the first seconds you should capture the player's attention and give him an intrigue. For this purpose, the spectacular intros are created. Here the intro cinematic is implemented on the game engine. It may be a pre-rendered though, but it looks quite impressive. And so devs cope with the first, let's call it 10 seconds objective. Next, you need to introduce the player to the basic mechanics and core gameplay loop. We have about 15 minutes for this, and it is difficult because of tutorial and plot immersion should go simultaneously. In the Ascent, from the first minutes you already know what you will have to do in the following few hours. The lack of gameplay diversity reveals from the first minutes. There are only few mechanics, enemies are mostly the same, levels are just different types of corridors. We should always keep in mind that the game is about gameplay. Add a bit more mechanics from the start, give a meaningful playable build choices, and the Ascent will be perceived in a completely different way. During the first 45 minutes, player complete tutorial and plunge into this dim neon atmosphere. Here narration techniques should help to immerse him. But unremarkable main storyline and trivial side quests after following hours of gameplay hardly manage to achieve this. After that, player can either decide to refund or accept to grind further through the monotonous gameplay. And this is the main design mistake. The Ascent do not have time to show all the variety and deep that awaits ahead, as it really got something to offer. Gameplay gradually changing when you got dozen level ups, collect an arsenal of fantastic guns and set the ability implants. New enemies will appear, and the storyline expands with the more conflicts and twists. But unfortunately, it's too late. It seems to me that if you reveal all these features a bit earlier, and the Ascent would have guaranteed success. Yes, it is definitely a niche project for true ARPG fans, but still. Finally, a few words about the technical part. The project is implemented on the Unreal 4 engine. Once again, we are convinced that it is able to provide an excellent visuals. But there are drawbacks too. First of all, insufficient code optimization. There are frequent micro freezes, especially when fancy visual effects popping up. Secondly, low FPS rate overall and drawdowns in populated areas. Again, are you sure that it is necessary to add such a number of faceless NPCs in neutral locations? All this rather related not to the engine itself, but to non-optimal game design decisions. These elements can be fixed, but it takes a long and unfairly hard work to be done. Nevertheless, when the selling price tag are that much higher than the average indie project, then the requirements should be higher. Don't you think so? Anyway, the Ascent is a great example of how you can develop an excellent modern and in many ways amazing action RPG. It is imperfect though, but if the devs had a little more time, desire or money, the result will be striking, I'm pretty sure. Well, even in this shape as for now, this project is able to provide you with several hours of true aesthetic pleasure. And I hope that this game design review was useful and exciting. Here, I wanna thank you for watching. If you like this video, you know what to do. I'll see you soon. Bye.